In this episode of the Smart Community Podcast, Zoe speaks with Heath Raftery, Head of Technology at boutique electronic product consultancy Community Ventures. Heath tells us about his background in computing and electrical engineering and why the strengths and weaknesses of engineers led him to an interest in economics, communication, and human behaviour. He explains how he became interested in smart concepts thanks to initiatives of the City of Newcastle and how he sees Australia currently embracing the smart community space. Heath shares some of the projects he's currently working on, including Smart Play, an initiative which involves playful ways to capture, use, and communicate smart city data. Zoe and Heath then cover why integration really needs organisations being supportive of individuals being collaborative, and the emerging trend of making grassroots projects sustainable through financial as well as community support. A quick warning, the audio quality of this episode does diminish in the last few minutes of the interview, but it's very listenable and well worth it too, as it's such a great conversation about the importance of local champions in smart regions. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
Welcome to the smart community, smart regions, smart towns, and smart cities. It's where we live, work and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.
Hello, Heath. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, Zoe.
Excellent to hear. Let's jump straight in. And can you tell us about your background and what you are passionate about?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a bunch of small country towns around New South Wales. I was always building stuff and breaking stuff and then fixing it again. Lego and motorbikes and tree houses and all sorts of stuff. And then when I was old enough to reach a keyboard, Dad introduced me to the family Apple IIe desktop PC. And I found that this crazy obedient machine could do all these things that I could command it to do, and they were well beyond, what I could do in my brain. And then we got this 2400 baud modem, and we used the phone lines to connect this machine to other machines around the world. And I was hooked, but of course my parents probably regretted it because every time they went to make a phone call, they get that squelching noise of me playing chess or something with someone on the other side of the world. Anyway, so fast forward to uni, and going to uni, career advisors were saying, well, you've got talent in mathematics, so you could be an actuary. That pays a lot. Or I hear that you can do courses in computers now. Maybe you should check that out. So I didn't really know what to do, but through a series of fairly random events, I actually came to study electrical engineering at University of Newcastle. And I really can't overstate how fortunate that turned out to be. Turns out that engineering is what I was born to do. I really, really enjoyed understanding and applying the complex laws of nature that dictate how the world works. And because I had this background of working on rusty old bikes and banging bits of metal together, I had this pragmatism for understanding how things were going to work in the real world. But then about year 3 of that degree, I had this epiphany. There were all these other smart people, smart engineers around me, but beyond the engineers, no one realised, that they were smart. So they were so consumed with being the smartest people in the room that their poor ability to relate and to communicate and to empathise meant that really no one cared. We used to have all these jokes in engineering about our idiosyncrasies and we'd pride ourselves on them. The ones like, what does an engineer use for protection against STD? His personality. Ha, ha, ha. Or how can you spot an extroverted engineer? Well, when you're talking to him, he looks at your shoes instead of his own. So anyway, I had this epiphany. All this technical talent in the world was going to be wasted if you couldn't communicate it, if you couldn't make people care. So I started studying economics, the science of how humans are motivated, and I took an interest in liberal arts subjects, culture and community. So I guess as Mark Twain put it, I made sure that I didn't let my schooling interfere with my education. And so, long story short, that's brought me to where I am now. I run this boutique electronic product development consultancy here in Newcastle called Community Ventures, and our job is to listen and to empathise and to understand and empower our customers and work with them to create these products that no one has thought of yet. So it's super challenging, which are wonderful, but I really think crucial and worthwhile work if we're going to live in a world that, values human-centered innovation. So I love it.
Yeah, excellent. Wow. It's a kind of wide and varied background, but also I'm an engineer, so I totally appreciate.
You've heard of those jokes before, have you?
Well, as a woman in engineering, you're not privy to a lot of those jokes.
That's interesting. Yeah, right.
But I totally agree that we engineers in general get consumed by being the smartest people in the room. And then that relationship with people is really lacking. I was kind of the opposite. I love the people side, and I saw engineering as a way to just kind of travel the world and meet more people. And so I was a bit of a different engineer in general. But those relationships, I think we really undervalue them until they're really valuable, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's it. You don't realise it. In fact, people sort of wear it as a badge of honour. I'm inhospitable and difficult to communicate with because I'm a genius. That's all well and good for you, but how are you going to get anything done or make people care if you don't, have a bit of empathy?
Yeah, exactly. So what sparked your interest in this smart cities or smart community space?
So it comes down to the initiative of the local council here, the City of Newcastle. So coincidentally, right around the time that we were forming New Ventures, there was all this early excited buzz around this concept of making the city alive through technology. So it was all about making all this city infrastructure like car parks and bins and street lights and park benches and even the space between these things. Self-aware, so aware of its own state. And we started imagining what would the possibilities be if your city could tell you how it's going. So it could tell you what the parking pressure is like in real time, or whether a bin needs emptying right now, or how much facilities are being used or not being used, or what the air quality is like right down on the street level. So I'd always worked in connected products in industry. So this idea of making the physical world around us connected was really appealing, and it was a natural extension of the things I had been doing in heavy industry.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because in industry it just automatically things have to be connected because it's a efficient way of doing things, or that needs to know that happens before this happens. And then extending that to an actual city or community, I mean, it's a bit more challenging, but the kind of the foundations are already there in your brain of how it would kind of work.
Exactly right, yeah. So I had seen all these wonderful things that you could do if you knew how your machines were operating or what was happening in the factory or in the mine. And so, as you say, it's a lot more challenging in a city space, but the potential was really there.
What is a smart community to you?
Well, I'm actually really encouraged because I think the smart city concept has evolved over the last couple of years in the right way. So originally, I think the narrative was really about efficiency. So it was about eliminating all these wasteful activities and making sure that everything you did was data-driven and responsive to that data. But there's really something very clinical about that approach, and cities aren't clinical, at least the parts that make them livable are not precise and clean. So I think there's been this, I think it's fairly evident, there's been this dramatic shift in the narrative. It's the likes of Smart Cities Council and Smart Cities World. In fact, I think you had her on recently, Sarah Ray, the editor at Smart Cities World. Yeah, so they've helped move this narrative along and say, look, the soulless efficiency metrics do not make a social movement. So people started to look at what has actually resonated, and it's this concept of livability. So all those aspects of city life that make people say, I like living here, this is my city. So of course we need to manage traffic and we need to make public transport more efficient, but we also want to give attention to public art and to help people find their way around the city and enhance the community connections that are already there. So it's about acknowledging that there's an imperfect and a weird side to city life, and having the city be responsive and accommodating to the humans and the cultures that are within that city. So I guess that's what smart city is to me. It's reflective, it's responsive, and it's delightful to humans. So it's about leveraging technology to make the city more human-centered, make it more livable, rather than just, putting in technology for technology's sake.
Why is this concept, the smart concept, so important?
Well, I think it's because the world's getting smaller. So to have a prosperous community, you need to attract and retain people from all walks of life. You need business people, you need students, you need families, you need your countercultures, and you need mainstream workers. So we've no longer got this luxury of just building up and building out for ever and a day. People want more from their cities, and they can also see that there's other options out there. So each city needs to discover what makes them attractive and make sure they can continue to remain attractive.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's part of it for sure. Like, the world is getting smaller. It is a good way to put it, that we can see what other opportunities are available, and also potentially we now have the ability to take those opportunities, whereas before we may have been able to see them, but it was too expensive or too far away, or whatever the reason, wasn't status quo or whatever. We couldn't take those opportunities, whereas now I think the smart city concept, smart community concept really opens up those opportunities for everyone to kind of have a go.
Yeah, that's it. And people start to demand these things of their city because they can see that they're achievable.
How do you think Australia is currently embracing this concept?
Well, I'm no expert on it, but I think from my point of view, fairly well, quite well, but in its own special way. And that's probably a good thing because we've got these unique requirements. Australia's got this low population density, high multiculturalism. We've got this short history of largely primary industries, and then this really, really long history of subsistence and independence. So we've got to do it in our own way, and we have to get the cynics on board too. So I think we're doing a pretty good job of it, and in particular in the regional areas, because we've got these really proud communities. So what's resonating with them is that you should be proud. These regional communities are important and there's a lot to be proud of. So what can we do to enhance what we already have, rather than try and, import something that worked in some city that doesn't reflect our way of life?
Yeah, I really like the enhance factor, particularly in, like you mentioned, the remote and rural areas, because I think that's what it should be, enhancing what's already there and continuing to, look at what we're doing now, look what happened in the past, and then kind of go, well, what kind of future do we want to make together? Yeah.
And I think if you look at attempts in the past to shoehorn something in, you're really, really pushing the proverbial up the hill if you try and do it that way. These communities are built on strong networks, and unless you're responsive to what, that very essence, whatever you place over the top is going to struggle to get some uptake.
What are some of the projects and things that you're currently working on?
So we've got a couple of really interesting public art or public infrastructure enhancement projects going on. So last year we formed this amazing relationship with the School of Creative Industries at the local university here, and we've been busy reimagining how you do public engagement. So instead of, for example, a citizen's bus route's being optimised based on data that they've never even seen, we want to start with the people and we want to see what we can ignite that way. So we've been coming up with all these fun, playful public exhibition pieces that are not smart city data enabled, but they don't dictate any particular purpose. So the invitation is there for people to come play with it and figure it out in their own way. So I'll give you an example. We launched a project called Baby Bulb last year, and it was this quite quirky, unusual looking lamp, and it sat in the foyer at the university here. It was made from local recycled parts. And when it was turned on, it would pulse rapidly like a baby's heartbeat. And then it was connected to smart city data feeds. And whenever it detected that a baby was born in the local region, the light would glow for a few seconds. So it got people thinking about what smart city data actually is and what some playful ways there might be to capture it and use it. So we've branded this initiative. We've done a few of these sorts of projects, and we've called it Smart Play. And as we started to communicate this, it put us on this collision course with people in other cities who had the same way of thinking, which was pretty exciting. So we ended up partnering with Tulip, which is a mob at the University of Technology, Sydney. And lately we've been doing a bunch of public art lighting projects. So instead of just using a normal white floodlight on the art, we varied the light intensity and the colour according to any sort of smart city data source you want to plug in. So the data, the smart city data and the light patterns become part of the artwork itself, and they start to reflect the city that you're living in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so one that's going up this week, I hope, cross fingers, is an obelisk in a skate park, which is a pretty funky place to put a bit of public art, and it's illuminated from the inside with these RGB lights, And the council's able to connect that to things like the local temperature, any weather warnings, the air quality at the street level, any data they can get their hands on, maybe the number of kick flip ollies or something or other that were performed at the skate park. And the structure will reflect that data as it's happening.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds really good. And I really enjoy smart play. That's such a fun term.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed it. It's certainly a project. What do you call them? They're a passion project where, difficult to get people to put money where their mouth is, but, it's really rewarding in its own way.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think we can better integrate across these different disciplines? Because I imagine you would have had to do a lot of, talking to council as well as artists, as well as getting other people on board, investors, et cetera, et cetera. How do you think we can better do that integration across the different disciplines?
Yeah. So this has been a learning experience for everyone involved, I think. And one of the fundamental things for me is that you have to break the procurement cycle. So you need a government that's willing to fund a bunch of genuinely novel, not at all guaranteed to work projects that are implemented by local consortiums. So you have to break down these walls that are created by these mantras like, nobody gets fired for buying IBM. So I cannot overstate that collaboration relies on individuals being collaborative. Very easy to forget that at the heart of it, it's about individuals acting in collaborative ways. So there needs to be these avenues for education institutes to partner with individuals from industry and to participate in government-backed initiatives that reflect local interests. So there's a couple of really good examples of that locally. The Smart City and Suburbs federal money, the federal grant that was awarded recently, ended up being divvied up and given to local interests to come up with novel ways to implement it. And some really interesting things came out of that. Certainly no guaranteed outcomes, but it just got people involved and thinking and sort of invested in their own city. There's another initiative that the university here did that they called Rapid, and it's been going for a couple of years now. And it's about just putting up a relatively small amount of money in the order of 10, 20 grand and just inviting projects that have a government representative, an industry representative and a university representative and doing something new, learning along the way, implementing something in the field that other people can interact with and having a crack at it. And some really, really exciting stuff has come out of that.
Yeah, and I like your point about picking up on the individual. Like we can kind of lump people together as, government's not collaborative or private industry is not collaborative or whatever. But yeah, you're right. It comes back to that individual. And obviously I'm well aware that we have to act within certain guidelines and boundaries and those type of things. But I think at an individual level, pushing those things and actually saying, okay, well, let's do something a little bit differently. That is the hardest part, right? Yeah,
it is. And you need to celebrate those people that are willing to do it, because they'll only do it for so long if they're not getting the support of their organisation. So even if an entire organisation can't be collaborative and involved in every single meeting that goes along in town, at least, they can support individuals being involved.
Mm-hmm. What are the emerging trends that people aren't talking about enough, do you think?
Well, I think we just touched on it, actually. I think it's the importance of local champions. I remember talking to Chad.
Oh, Chad Ronaldo?
Thank you. Yes. And obviously he's done a lot of research into innovative ecosystems and smart city ecosystems and what makes them. And he asked me, a lot of things about the Newcastle ecosystem. I said, well, this has been in place and this person's doing this and this person's doing that. And he said, so how long has that been going on? I said, 18 months or so. And he said, yeah, that's generally how long individuals last when they're just running on enthusiasm. And people don't recognise the value that these local champions who are working towards something, what importance they play until they disappear. And they eventually do disappear if they're not supported or backed or given the freedom or the funding to do what it is that they do. So, yeah, I think one of the emerging trends is that the communities are unequally aided by champions, by people that put their neck on the line and push and push and push to represent the people that they're representing. And so I'd love to see some more conversation about how we equip those people, how we recognise those people and the contributions that they're making.
So it was Chad Renato. I just made sure I got his name.
Thank you very much.
No worries. I spoke to Chad just via email briefly. I need to catch up with him again, so thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, great.
And it's so true, I think, like the individual level, celebrating those champions, and even more importantly, as you said, actually getting support, because, they only last so long and they can't do it alone. And I think us as individuals, we can really make a big difference, but the difference that we can make individually versus the difference we can make with support and collaboration and all that kind of thing is just exponentially greater. So I think that's a really good point, and something that we probably don't talk about enough, for sure.
No, if you want to talk about bang for buck, you look at these people that are running on the smell of an oily rag and making things happen in their local community, and people think that it'll go on forever, but it won't unless there's just a little bit of support, and then that can go a long way.
And we also need to remember that, everyone still needs money to survive and thrive. And I think that sometimes we see money as this evil thing that, I'm doing this for love and I can't possibly get paid for it as well. That's, then I wouldn't be doing it for the right reasons. But if you can't support yourself and your family, you can't help anybody. So I think
that's right. Yeah.
We have this real, and particularly in Australia, this kind of tall poppy thing. If someone's making a lot of money, they can't be, doing passion projects at the same time, kind of thing. So I think it's something that we really need to shift. And I think in the smart city space, there's a lot of passion, but there is also the ability to make money as well. I don't think we should separate the two things as, we either have to be passionate or make money. So, and a lot of the time the individuals, a lot of that support can actually be, it's not just money, but support with, maybe we make this job, rather than you trying to do it in your own time, maybe we make it a role that you can get support by your organisation or whatever it is. So, I think it's so true.
Yeah, it comes down to sustainability, really.
You're right.
These sorts of efforts, they need to be sustainable, and they'll only run on people's goodwill for so long, and a little bit of money can go a long way. There's a really good initiative here locally called Hunter If for the Hunter region, and it's been accidentally described as an umbrella organisation, but the board are really keen to flip that picture and say, no, we're not another layer of bureaucracy over all the wonderful, innovative things that are happening in the region. In fact, you guys are doing all the wonderful, innovative things. What we're doing is we're coming underneath it and we're connecting it, and we're pointing out that this person's doing that great thing and this person's doing that great thing. And can we help? Can we pay for an assistant to make this a more worthwhile project or something like that? So there's really encouraging things happening there.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense to me, rather than coming over from the top. Yeah, coming from kind of grassrootsy, but in a sense of making those connections, and which is essentially the smart community approach, right?
That's it. Yeah, you got to recognise those grassroots contributions, because that's what makes a community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Heath. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you. I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely honoured. Thank you very much, Zoe.
Awesome. How can people connect with you?
The easiest way is probably LinkedIn, for what that's worth. I've got a fairly Googleable name, so if you search for Heath Raftery, Raftery, then chances are you'll find me, and LinkedIn's a good place to jump on and drop me a line and make the connection. Would love to connect with more people in this space.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think that's where we connected, so it makes sense.
Yeah, true.
Cool. Well, we'll put all the links in the show notes so people can click away and find you. And thanks again for coming on to the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, Zoe.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community Podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community or find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter @SmartComPod. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears, so thank you in advance. As always, I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.